Everybody's talking about supply chain disruption. But how many people that are talking about it really understand at a base level what it is? And how important is that understanding? Let's say you're at your favorite department store or, a big box store. You're walking through the aisles and you're trying to find your favorite stationery, and you show up. And unfortunately, your favorite stationery just isn't available. It's not there. It's gone. And you say, man, I really wanted my favorite stationery. It's like, what gives? And the person standing next to you in the aisle goes, supply chain disruption. Am I right? And of course, we as human beings we need to be accepted and not viewed as intelligent and competent. So you go, yeah, man. How about that supply chain disruption? You said it. You said it, man. That's how they get you with the supply chains. But did that guy really know what supply chain meant and what it had to do with your stationery showing up or not showing up in the aisle at that big box retailer? Maybe, maybe not. Do you really know what supply chain is? There's a lot going on in the world of supply chain management. You see the Amazons and the Walmarts. I mean, we are in a world where we require almost instantaneous delivery of goods and services. Boom, you need it the next day or 2 days, or you don't order it. It's not Prime, you don't order it. But there are things that are happening in the world today that are truly disrupting those chains of supply, that are preventing things from effectively, or could potentially prevent things from effectively getting to your retailer, your friendly neighborhood retailer, or shipped to your door. And let me let you in on a little secret. That supply chain and goods and product apocalypse could very well have already happened already, if not for the diligent work, some very smart people that are way smarter than me. And I say without hyperbole, that just got really loud for a second. That was weird. New microphone. What can you do? And I say without hyperbole that these superheroes are saving us from economic and supply chain collapse. And those superheroes I'm talking about are data analysts and data scientists. And today we invite back to the show a very good friend of ours, probably the smartest person that I know, a data scientist, Raymond Roberts. He's going to talk about what is really at a base level, what is supply chain? Who's supplying this, that, and who's receiving it? Where are the ins and outs and where are the problems occurring? And how is data and data analytics being used to prevent problems, to increase efficiency? And how can it be used and leveraged in the future to keep things humming? Like I said, the superheroes behind the scenes. Really intriguing stuff. We're going to talk about it right after this. Whoa. Love it. I mentioned I have a new microphone today, and I notice it's getting louder and quieter. I wonder if it has an auto compensation feature. I think there's an app. I really need to become more familiar with the gear, before I unleash it on you poor unsuspecting folks. But so far so good. I'm rocking the headphones today just to see if that clarifies the audio a little bit. But enough about me. Enough about my new microphone. Let's talk supply chain. Ray Roberts, my friend. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are we doing today?
I'm doing really well. I'm actually very excited to learn about this because, I was that guy in the Walmart who was just nodding in agreement with the supply chain disruption. Am I right? I was that guy going, yeah, mm-hmm. But I really didn't. I mean, at a base level, I don't know. So, I mean, if we're talking supply chain, before we talk about data and analytics and how that, and how the current climate of the world, the pandemic, the economy, globalization, demand, whatever, is affecting supply chain, let's talk about supply chain. Who's supplying what? What is being supplied? What is a supply chain, and how does it affect the average citizen?
I like the way you're starting out with this. I know we don't have 3 hours, so we're gonna move in that fashion.
We got 28 and a half minutes.
So very often these conversations kind of think about what you were just sharing about that conversation in Walmart. Very often these conversations engage in terms of trading declarations. This is what it is. This is how I see it. You started off very well. We're going to jump into something so big and so complex. We should lead with questions like, what are we supplying? Where is it coming from? I would even go further. You said the statement of for the average person, the average American, the average wealthy American. These are important questions about supply. And that's really where you start. What are we supplying? Where is it coming from? Who's it going to? And how bad do they want it?
Interesting. Okay. And so is it different then for a wealthy American? Does supply chain matter more or less to somebody that might be in the middle or labor wage class?
Well, let's zoom in and just focus on America.
Okay.
Most products, goods and services, I'm not ready to say all, but most are finite, meaning there's not enough for everyone. So even so that's availability. Does the product exist?
Okay.
But let's pretend it does exist. The question me and you are going to dig into today is, can you get it? This is not a new question. So you've probably, maybe you have not heard, or you've heard this before. The world actually produces enough food to feed everybody. That's availability. People still starve. That's access. You'll often see memes on social media about the fact that people are starving because there's not enough food being produced, or you'll even see there's not enough food being given away. These are actually they're oversimplifications. I'm not prepared to say they're false. They're oversimplifications of the situation. Your primary factor in whether or not everyone gets fed is actually logistics.
Okay.
So what does that mean? Maybe there is someone, in fact, there are people donating food all the time through various organizations, for profit and non. Can you get it to the person who needs it before it goes bad? Can you get it to them before they starve? So logistics begins with, one, do we have the product? Two, who needs or wants it? And in the big part, can we get it to them in time?
Right on. So what is preventing then? Let's say we have enough food to feed every hungry mouth in the United States. Where are the hurdles? Where are the pain points then? What is making it difficult to get those food items into people's homes and in their mouths and in their bellies?
Well, let's just start with the easy one. Who's hungry? Do you have a list of everyone who's hungry right now?
No.
How long have they been hungry? Do you even have an idea where you go on Google? I don't. So it's really starting with, what do we know, and having an honest take. How aware are we of what we don't know? So me and you could decide we're going to feed everyone in America. Can we be honest that we don't know who's hungry? And we don't know in order of precedence. So you could have two people that are hungry, but one individual hasn't eaten in a day. The other hasn't eaten in 3 days. One hasn't eaten in 7 days. Do you have a list with their name, location, and the number of days since they've eaten?
But does that matter if we have enough for everybody, regardless of how long it's been since they've had a meal?
Well, short answer, yes, because even if you have enough, do you have enough trucks?
So now we're getting into the supply chain.
Exactly. So you can easily find this online. Food drives,
Mhm.
food banks, they throw away a lot of food because it goes bad. It's not enough to have it. So, how do you get it to who needs it?
Mm.
Minimum, you need to know who needs it. So, even if we don't have the graduation of how long it's been since you eaten, do we have the list of every kid that's going home and doesn't have hungry? Are parents volunteering that information? I'm not feeding my kid.
Huh.
Now we can take a less sensitive issue here because this is kind of venturing in
Sure,
social
sure. Yeah, yeah.
things. Let's
Mhm.
stick with let's take consumerism. So
Okay.
we'll walk away from your Maslow hierarchy of needs. You need food.
Sure.
Let's go to your wants.
Okay.
Amazon or even Walmart. Let's stick with your Walmart example. In order,
The stationary aisle with the hey, how about that supply chain disruption guy?
right. So with these products, we all these factories are for-profit businesses. So
Mm.
they're not making millions and millions of a product just to make sure it's always available. A profitable business will make just enough to meet demand. That's the goal, of course.
Right.
So let's talk about how Walmart kind of came onto the scene with analytics.
Okay.
Um, I do want to do one disclosure just to make sure that there's not people waiting for me at my car this afternoon. It is hyperbole that data scientists have done it all. A lot of this stuff we're talking about, which is why I love talking about this on a veterans conversation.
Mhm.
This goes back to World War II. The origins of this logistical analytics, this
Mhm.
was the beginning of moving goods during the war. Who needs bullets when and where? And when do they need them? We
Well,
can
let me
pridefully say
just
this started with the Army.
say though that uh, a superhero would definitely say, "Oh, I'm not a superhero." That's like a common line that you would hear from a superhero. So I'm not buying it. But yes, let's look at it from a data analytics. That's Walmart wants based consumerism.
In order to meet that, one of the amazing things that Walmart did was, I've seen it by different names, but we're going to call it zero inventory. Have you ever noticed that when the shelves are empty and you ask at Walmart, do you have any in the back? The answer is almost always no,
So why is that?
because they don't hold inventory. Think about it. Items sitting in the back don't make money.
Hmm. They take
When
space, which costs money.
Right, you're paying for that space, people can't see it. So, this is a very 10,000-foot elevation
Hmm.
synopsis. These are
Hmm.
very smart people at Walmart who developed this and maintain it to this day. The approach is, instead of just having 100 in the background when we know we sell 10 a week, why don't we only bring in 10 a week? Where it needs
Mm.
to go, when it needs to be there. Zero
Right.
inventory. So those few times they actually do go to the back and they have it, my guess would be the reason why it's back there, the new shipment just showed up. You just came at the
Right.
right time, the new shipment just showed. But no, what Walmart enabled themselves to do is, to your point, well, I'm gonna make up a number and say the normal approach, you have a building, 60% of your building is storage in the back.
Right.
The way Walmart is structured, and many companies have implemented this moving forward since,
Right.
is that's a much smaller footprint of the business. You make
Right.
your money on the sales floor. People need to see it.
And why are they able to do that now when they weren't able to do that when, say, you and I were growing up? They didn't have the same sort of foresight or understanding about their products and the demand for the products?
I would say there's probably many answers, but one that I can safely say is we didn't have the computers. Let's go back to the 80s.
Mhm.
It was very expensive to store information. Now
Mm.
the average American's probably got a terabyte of photos, which statistics
Right.
show they'll never
Right.
look at a second time. They
Right.
pay That's how cheap storage is. You
Mm.
pay to store terabytes of photos, you don't even ever look at them again.
Hmm.
Back in the 80s, however, it wasn't 99 cents for a terabyte. You First off, I don't
You
think you could
couldn't
even
get a
get a
terabyte in
terabyte.
the 80s,
You couldn't
man.
even get
Yeah.
a terabyte in the 80s. The cost has dropped, I think, to near zero comparatively,
Oh,
honestly.
of course, yeah.
So, storage
Mhm.
and then compute. So, even to this day, take Excel, for example.
Mhm.
You can't open a file in Excel that has more than, I'm gonna round up actually, 500,000 observational rows.
Okay.
So while the business was there, we didn't have the storage capacity in the computers, and we did not have the compute ability. So that's very important that you asked me that, because much smarter people were thinking these things way before I was even born. You can find the papers, depending on how you think about it, going back to the 70s, if not even the 20s.
Mm.
Problem is, technology had not caught pace with the ideas.
Well, so let me use this as an example. Let's say I own a grocery store and I don't have computers in the grocery store. Mom and pop, rural Montana. I don't have computers. I sell macaroni. I got macaroni and cheese on the shelf. I buy a box of that from a distributor, and I predict how much of it I'd be able to sell within a given period of time. And when I get close to running out, I get more. And that's just kind of how it works. And then I use my intuition to know what the demand is, and when I need to resupply. There's no continuity there. It's all institutional knowledge. So there's one half. Is that kind of accurate?
That's very accurate. Basically, you're saying the human computer.
Exactly. So then on the other end of things, let's say I do have a computer, and my computer records transactions and can tell me when, based on consumer trends and preferences, and when people purchase and don't, and how they purchase and how they spend their money, and all these things that are being calculated behind the scenes, it'll tell me when is the time to order more macaroni. And it could potentially automatically order that macaroni and make sure that it's on my next shipment to rural Montana from my mom and pop store. Is that kind of on a much larger scale than what a Walmart or a Target does?
Yes. So let's work backwards like you just did. We're
Okay.
gonna make it all about getting your macaroni.
Mm.
But you don't want the Kraft macaroni. You're making your macaroni. So we need eggs, milk, cheese, salt, pepper, pasta. Okay.
Okay.
So take the mom and pop store. The human computer is the best computer we know of, for the record.
So far,
True.
until
So
this
far.
point. This point.
So if that mom and pop, over their years of experience, they build both intuition, but also that institutional knowledge that you mentioned.
Right.
Um, the difference is with our computers today. So let's say mom and pop have been doing this for 30 years. So they're really good at forecasting. They're really good because they have 30 years of experience.
Right.
With a computer today, we can take a kid with zero experience, just give them the transaction receipts, and they can get 80% as good. So think about that. They're only 80% as good at forecasting as mom and pop, but it only took them a day or two versus 30 years.
Right.
That's the cost benefit trade-off. So that's important to say because, let's say artificial intelligence, machine learning, data and analytics, it's never going to replace people. People who utilize machine learning and artificial intelligence will replace people who don't use it. That's a very key aspect there.
So is this an economies of scale thing? Or are they basically just accepting that there are times, due to the way we do business and the way we compute things and have our supply chain set up, the way this macaroni and all the ingredients to make it get restocked via computers, we are accepting that 15% of the time, people are going to show up to the store and the eggs won't be there, or the cheese won't be there, or the milk won't be there, versus the human computer version where it might be 1% of the time, 2% of the time. Are we saying that, like, we're just expecting to move so much product right now that 15% doesn't matter because we're making so much more money that way anyways?
I would say that the computer starting out will not be as good as your best human, but they will surpass your best human very quickly. So it's kind of like they don't, let's say there's an industry I have no background in, and you ask me to build an analytical model. I am not going to be as good as someone who's been in the game for 35 years, my first iteration.
Right.
But
Right.
I will over time, as my machine learner learns, you should put money on me surpassing them. Because look at what we have right now, sticking with grocery stores. And this is important for logistics because you can't decide logistics till you know demand.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why you have the Costco card and those customer loyalty cards is because they're tracking your sales. They're
Mm-hmm.
tracking what you do. And this enables them to say, okay, this guy comes in this often and he comes in for these things. So they're knowing you, but it gets even groovier with these. We're collecting all the people who come to your store. The store can then say, you know what? When someone grabs eggs, they're 60% more likely to get milk. Let's put milk and eggs together.
Mm.
Or if this person walks by this item, they're going to buy it. But if they don't walk by it, they won't think to buy it. Our grocery stores are to that point now to where the order in which things are put are to get you to buy the most things. Walk around the outside of the grocery store versus the inside of it. That's
Mm-hmm.
done for two different types of people. People who are like, I need to get in and out very quickly. They have certain propensities. So you can, on average, no matter who the company is, you can walk the outside of the store, grab milk, eggs, cheese, butter, the staples of life
Mm.
without going to the inside aisles. It's very possible. Vegetables, meat, bread, you get all that stuff. I mean, I challenge you to find a store where the meat section's in the middle of the store.
Right. Well,
These are done for a reason.
let me ask you this then. So we have more information and more processing power, more storage power than we've ever had before to be able to make some pretty incredible predictions about human behavior. So why the disruption? Why are we having supply chain issues right now? What's getting in the way of stocking those shelves with the products we need? Much more than we've ever seen, much more
Right.
than 2 years ago, pre-pandemic. So what's the disruption, and how is the not superhero, data scientist helping us to overcome what could be a worse situation or getting us out of a bad one?
I will answer this way.
Okay.
Um, is in and the general public takes anything from this discussion, this is the part I'd like them to focus on.
Mhm.
There is predictive analytics. That's me saying what's going to happen. Then there's prescriptive, like a prescription from the doctor,
Sure.
prescriptive analytics. Basically, my solution to changing the future, my recommendation to how we change the future. Basically, if you don't take the medicine, this is my prediction. If you do
Mhm.
take the medicine, which is my prescription, this is how we can change that future I predicted. So,
Okay.
regarding these shortcomings, it's like war and weather. You're being able to predict the weather. Have you ever asked the weatherman, well, since you can predict 14 days out, why can't you change the weather? Has that notion ever come into your head?
No.
That holds for everything.
Okay.
Just because I can predict the weather 14 days out has little to no indication of my ability to change the weather 14 days out.
But you can better
So
prepare.
you can better prepare. You can mitigate the effects of.
Mm.
So if I predict that we're not going to have enough cars being imported into the country, this doesn't mean I have the authority to tell China to build more cars.
And ship them over.
My ability to predict our shortcoming of cars coming into the country
Sure.
doesn't mean I can tell the steel miners work harder or
So
find more steel faster.
how does your access to that data then? How do you as a data scientist, let's use cars for example. How do you mitigate that issue? Is it just an education? Like you let people know, hey, we're gonna have some shortcomings.
It's really education. I actually, when I was listening to your intro, you said some two great things that I wrote down. You
Really?
you
You might
said
be the only person that has written down things that I've said. I'm
because it's
flattered.
very important, it's a good tie up here. You wrote, how many people understand the whole supply chain thing,
Sure.
and how important is it that they understand?
Mm.
I can know what's going to happen, and we can count how many people like me know what's gonna happen. And when I say no, I don't mean we know the future. We have, um, we have empirical evidence. We have statistical evidence supporting why we think this is gonna happen next.
If somebody drops a water balloon on my head and you do a freeze frame with it, like right here, my prediction is that that person's going to get wet.
Again, coming back to our weatherman, he never quote unquote knows, but they're so good at it. There's a high, you still keep listening. That's how many people are meteorologists. Then the question is, how important is it that we know the 14-day forecast? So if he's forecasting it's going to rain, yeah, we know to bring umbrella, or we know not to plan an outdoor picnic. If the weatherman predicts that there's a Category 4 hurricane coming and we live on an island, how important is it that we know? I mean, we can batten down the hatches, but we live in a hut. No matter what we do, everything's about to get washed away.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
So those things you stated are very important. We have the compute power. The education part is what we as a community, not just the data scientists, we as a whole need to really flex that muscle of understanding. There's us knowing what's going to happen, then us having an honest conversation of what is possible, what we can do about it, and then going back to the analytics and testing that theory. We think we can do this about it. Let's see if there's evidence supporting that.
I know you have a hard stop here. I feel like we should do supply chain part 2.
We can definitely do supply chain part 2,
because I want to talk about this more.
Here was the foundation.
Yeah,
we're talking about prediction or analytics. First, can we predict the future? Can we give a prediction for the future? And then, what evidence do we have we can affect the future? Coming back to our grocery store, do we have evidence showing that if we put the cereal at the level that the kids can see it, we'll sell more cereal than if we put it at the level that the adults see it? Which, spoiler alert, we do.
Right. Well, this is I think we've got a great foundation right now. Let's definitely, we're going to coordinate on round 2 for this, so we can go a little more in depth. But this was great to lay a foundation for, if you don't know what supply chain is, basically it's how your products get to where they're going based on your demand. And data is centered around that entire process, because it ensures that the products get there and the right amount of products get there and they don't take up space, which wastes money and blah, 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 blah. So this has been really informative, Ray. I appreciate your time. I ask you to hang on 1 second. Like I said, I know you have a hard stop, but thank you so much. And we'll definitely be seeing you again, man. That was really, really cool. If you have questions, follow-up questions, put them in the comments, please. And we'll be sure to follow up with you, and we'll let you know when round 2 is. And I think we should also talk about what happens if all these data analysts, or our ability to analyze data the way that we do in the cloud globally, disappears. What happens to our economy like when the pandemic hits if we don't have this analysis? What happens to our supply chain? You're complaining that there's no macaroni on the shelf, but what could it have been? How awful would that have been? I think that would be worthy thing to chat about. But I appreciate all of you for tuning in. And we're going to continue this conversation later. There's a lot more to dive into. We'll see you next time.